Seeing as just a couple months ago I posted a really nasty rant about the vampire genre, you would think I would have nothing positive to say about this movie. That could not be further from the truth. I love the vampire genre. I just hate what it's turned into. But that's another topic. This movie was actually quite interesting, and I did enjoy the majority of it. It is a very interesting take on the vampire genre. And to give you all a brief understanding about what this movie's about, let me set up a hypothetical here. Imagine you and your friends are all sitting around having a drink, having a good time one night, and the question is raised, hey, if you could be a vampire, would you do it? 95% of us in this day and age would probably say, oh, you mean I get to live forever? I get to stalk hot girls and suck on their blood? Sure, no problem, I'd love to be a vampire. Well, this movie tells what happens if that question was actually raised. In the future, 95% of human beings have turned into vampires. It's this disease that spreads throughout millions and millions of people across the world. Now, humans come to understand what this disease is. It's actually vampirism. And they actually adapt it to their own so that they no longer have disease, there's no longer suffering, and they're basically regular human beings, except that now they're going to live forever, and they can't walk out in the sunlight. And they need to occasionally feast on the blood of humans. But that is the big problem. If everyone decides to become a vampire, who do they feed on? Which is the dilemma of this movie. Humans have become so few and far between that the only living humans are farmed for their blood in these massive silos. Enter in Ethan Hawke's character, who is a prominent scientist for this big corporation. They're trying to find a blood substitute so that vampires can continue to go on without needing to feast on the blood of human beings. So in a gist, that is the basis for this film. And it is quite interesting. For those of you who have seen my rant on the vampire genre, you'll know that I place all vampire films into one of three subgenres. And it's kind of hard for me to do that with this movie. This movie isn't about romantic vampires, it's not about warrior vampires, and it's not really about sadistic vampires. They're just human beings who happen to be vampires. They're acting like any regular Joe Schmoes you would find on the street, except that they live forever, they never age, and they need to occasionally drink human blood in their coffee. And the one thing that I really liked about this movie is how it popularized vampires while also villainizing them. What occurs throughout this movie is when the vampires are deprived of human blood, they start turning into the vampires of old. These monstrous creatures who really do depict the sadistic vampire genre. These creatures are hideous, they are monstrous, and they have no logic at all. All they want is blood, blood, blood. And that is one of the strengths of this movie. The majority of vampires you see in this movie are calm, collected, sophisticated, but if you deprive them of an ounce of blood, they will start going nuts. They will transform into these monstrous creatures that we all know to be true vampires. And that is what vampires should be. They should have this underlying fear and intimidation no matter where they go. However, this movie is not without its flaws. The biggest one comes in the movie's ending. I'm not going to give it away, but I'm just going to say that's all the movie gives us. An ending. The movie does not give us a true conclusion. It doesn't wrap up things that well, which a movie doesn't need to do, but in an instance like this film, I would have liked it. I mean, you see the main characters, you see things happen, but there's no conclusion to anything. It just ends. Sometimes that's good for a movie, sometimes that's bad for a movie, sometimes that can set up a sequel, but I don't think they were meaning to set up a sequel with this movie. It just ended, which really doesn't make any damn sense. But despite the odd ending, the rest of the film was very solid, and I enjoyed nearly every moment of it. So, final rating. This isn't the most brilliant or the most revolutionary vampire film I've seen, but it's still very good. In fact, if you are a fan of the vampire genre, I suggest you get out and see this movie right away, because it is quite good. Now, if you're just an action fan, or just a general fan of movies like this may not be the perfect film for you to see this winter, but you'll probably still have a good time with it. I'm going to give Daybreakers 3.5 stars. If nothing else, I'm glad that the directors of this film decided to try to return vampires to their true roots. But before finishing up this review, I need to tell you all a quick story, because this infuriated me when it occurred. The other day, I was walking out of the movie theater. I had just finished one of my shifts, and I'm walking past the Daybreakers theater, and the movie just happened to be letting out at that moment. And the audience is walking out, they're chatting about the movie, and I was just about to walk out of the theater myself when I overheard a couple of girls talking about the movie. As I walk by, one of the girls turns to the other and says, "You know, I'm really confused. Why did the vampires burst into flames into sunlight instead of sparkling?" I stopped in my tracks and stared at these two girls. And I will tell you all, from the bottom of my heart, that it took every ounce of my willpower not to beat the living hell out of these little brats. Why don't they sparkle? Because they're not f***ing fairies! Take care.